So, Jennifer, obviously, I want to thank you first and foremost for carving some time out of your day. I know it's everything's hectic and different, but do me a favor. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell people a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So I'm Jennifer Murphy, and I'm a licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania. I've been in my private practice now for 3 years and typically focus on depression, anxiety, trauma, and substance use, are usually the majority of the clients that I see. And obviously I have my master's in mental health counseling, and I used to be a therapist in Florida as well. I
Oh, wow.
worked as a director for like a million different rehabs and stuff like that, but this is by far like what I love to do the most. Absolutely.
Awesome. So are you from PA or are you from Florida and moved?
Florida.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Won't hold that against you. No, I'm kidding. Awesome. So obviously the reason I wanted to connect with you right now, I think your background kind of speaks in volume, and right now just with the pandemic and people just being in a different state of mind. I wanted to talk to you, specifically for those reasons. So why don't you tell me a little bit about like your current practice? What did that look like before the pandemic, and kind of like what's the shift in what you're doing now?
So, and this is also very sad. So with my practice was full, like every week, 25 clients, consistent. It was good. And then the pandemic hit. Like I mentioned to you earlier, some of the clients were uncomfortable doing the sessions virtually, so that wiped out a certain percentage. Then a lot of my clients got laid off. A lot of my clients were hairdressers, bartenders. So that was done. Like, so I lost, like, I'd say like 2/3 of my practice, to be honest with you. So there are a lot of people that aren't getting the help that they need,
Yeah.
like right now, and they just kind of have to wait. And it kind of concerns me because, like, for the clients that are still seeing me, like, their symptoms are going up because of the pandemic, not going down.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're having more anxiety because obviously, like, we don't know anything about this virus. We don't know what it could potentially do. We don't know when this whole thing is going to get resolved. And even when we reopen, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Like, we have no idea. And then for the clients that are already struggling with depression and isolation, this is like practically destroying them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's definitely, for lack of a better term, it's a perfect storm, and perfect used very loosely, because how can you use that word in this type of in this time? But so right now what you're doing is 100% online, and then when um things like when the mandates lift, your concern is like, what do you think about like the people who are just afraid to come face to face? Do you think that you're going to see this online presence grow at some point, or do you think like that 1/3 is pretty much what you're expected to see?
I do think it'll be that, but I also, like, because I'm going back to the office the minute I'm able to. And so, like, and I know a lot of my clients want to, but then there are some of my clients that are afraid, like you mentioned. So I'm still going to be offering the telehealth sessions for them.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be a matter of like what people are more comfortable with.
Yeah.
But
And so, in your experience now that you're doing this via video, talk about that a little bit. Like I think earlier you mentioned that like you're seeing almost like a seesaw. Like it's benefiting in some things, but maybe not in others. Like how is the like actual not like face to face but digital meetings going for you, if you would?
I mean, for the clients that are participating in it, I think it's going okay. I actually think it's more like it's more my frame of thought that because I don't have the resources that are at my office, I don't feel like I can give them handouts or like helpful things, and I don't have access to any of that stuff. So I don't feel as effective. I'm just trying to get through.
Yeah.
But they still seem to be getting something out of each session, so that's good. But again, I just feel like I'm not at like my 100% like I normally would be.
Yeah. This definitely presents a hurdle. I mean, and at the end of the day, I mean, everyone knows that just human nature, we long for that connection, that bond,
Mhm.
we're social by nature. So with that, I had another question for you. So you had mentioned earlier when we were speaking that there is something that you are doing on Saturdays. Matter of fact, I think that's what you just did prior to us connecting today. Is that correct?
No, it's at 3.
At
So,
3. Okay.
yeah.
Can
I
you
had a
talk a little?
session before us, and I'm doing the group at 3.
You're busy, but
Yes.
it's needed.
Yeah.
Like I say, even though it's reduced numbers, it's still a service that's greatly needed. Can you talk a little bit about the service, like what's going to happen at 3 o'clock today?
Sure. So today, each group we focus on something different. I'm a dialectical behavior therapist, which is a whole thing in and of itself. So it focuses on distress tolerance, which everybody needs right now,
Yeah, for sure.
mindfulness, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness skills. So this today we're doing distress tolerance, and specifically how we can use this in this time to help us sort of like relax and like take the edge off a little bit from like what's happening.
Yeah.
So we're doing this virtually, but even before I figured out that we needed to start doing this virtually, I had a support group on Facebook anyway,
Mhm.
and it's the same name of the group that it still is. It's the Lansdale Anxiety and Depression Support Group. So people can go in there like at any time, like 24 hours a day, and like post like what's going on with them and get feedback from the other group members and get the support they need
I love it.
and stuff like that. And I'll put homework assignments on there for them, and I'll put like positive quotes like to help them through things. But so we've been doing that since the very beginning. So it's
Love
just
it.
like one more tool that people can use. And I have people like in that group that aren't in Pennsylvania, they're like all over the place.
Yeah, I love
So
it. You mentioned Lansdale. Is your brick and mortar location in Lansdale?
yes.
Awesome. So I'm in my private office space right now, which is in Lansdale. So we're neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm, as you will see, I'm big on small business and things like that, and try to do a lot in the community. So, hey, neighbor.
Hi.
So, you mentioned mindfulness, which is one thing that I'm big on. So to give an example, would one session be specifically on mindfulness, or would you, because there's so many different things, like mindfulness is a blanket statement, if you will, and there's so many aspects to it. Give me an idea of like what a session might entail, how long is it, things like that.
Well, so the group usually lasts about an hour. And so, like with mindfulness, like, I mean, I guess, like, let's say it was an intro to mindfulness class,
Mhm.
we would be talking about how our brain is sort of like an untrained puppy, neither good nor bad, but it's either running off into the future
Yep.
where it doesn't need to be, or it's running off into the past where it doesn't need to be. And we kind of need to yank it back to the present, like
Yes.
always to the present.
Yeah.
And so, and then I'll talk why like being connected to the past all the time is really hurtful and harmful, and also why being connected to the future is pointless, because
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do about that, but we can like actually do something about the present.
Yep.
And so then I'll give them ideas on, well, we might do like it's called a formal mindfulness exercise, where I'll have them, like my favorite one is actually a focus shift. And I'll kind of explain this real quick to the
Yeah.
best of
No,
my
take your time,
ability.
please. Please do.
um, but a focus shift is like a mixture of like a grounding technique, where they're looking at something, like they'll concentrate on, look at something you can see and describe it to yourself in your mind and focus only on that. And then you flip it back, and then you're like, now close your eyes and like conjure up like the emotion you're feeling.
Yep.
And then you have to describe your emotion, like what is it, and it's a weird exercise, but it's like you have to describe like what does it look like, what does it sounds like, if it had a shape, what would it, what would that be like, and what sound it makes, and like, and what's its energy like. And the reason we do that is because when you describe it like that, it's pushing it out almost of you, and then it's something that you can observe rather than something that's controlling you. And one of my clients, I'll give her credit because she's the one that brought it up. She said, she related it. It's the greatest analogy, that it's the difference between looking at a hot stove and just observing that there's a hot stove there versus like putting your hand right on the hot stove.
Yep.
And then we flip that back and forth with the grounding technique. So they're like thinking about what they can hear, and then, you know, what they can touch and what they can smell. So it's just a way of getting them to be like, I'm right here in the present. I don't need to be here. I don't need to be there. I can be like right here.
Yeah. So all of that speaks to me in volume. I think there was a book, The Power of Now.
Yes. By Eckhart Tolle, right?
Yes. And I'm going to butcher the one quote in there, but it stuck with me, the principle of it, right? And it was, you know, the conscious is never really happy because it's always a victim of the past or the future, right? So, and I think like this is such like a good part of this conversation, because I think a lot of people right now, regardless if they're reporting to work, not reporting to work, have food in the fridge, don't have food in the fridge, the mind is, I think most people are in the future. They're forecasting what could happen. And usually it's never like rainbows and unicorns, right? It's all the negative, grim, you know, in my background, not to speak about me, but I am in real estate, but I'm in default real estate where I represent banks and I go through foreclosure process. So I'm always in contact with people who are, you know, more so in that negative mindset because it's a big thing, right?
Right.
But where I'm going with that is right now, I think a lot of people who are never going to see any of those things happen, the lights will remain on, the food will remain in the fridge, their mind is already taking them to a spot where it shouldn't be. And it's affecting, you know, like everybody's home right now, internet usage is up, streaming is up. There's so many productive things that people could be doing with their time, like, you know, conversations, just having a conversation with someone through, and that stuck with me. And I think about that every day, right? You know, I can't let my mind wander to those places because we don't know. All I can control is right now. Right.
The bad part about it, though, is that the media definitely doesn't help, because like one of the things that I remember coming out, and this is why I just said, you know what, I'm only going, like there's this world meter thing that just shows you how many new cases we have and how many deaths. That's the only thing I look at about the virus, because when I was watching things and they were like starting to make all these predictions, like the economic fallout, it's just going to be like the Great Depression, and they were showing like long lines like outside of like banks or like grocery stores and people not having any food. I'm like, this is not helpful. Like, we don't know that this is going to happen, but it's putting the fear in everybody's mind that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's, you know, it's safe to say that misery loves company, right? So once that mindset, I think like then people dive into the media more to be reaffirmed. And it's like, look at these lines. So it's not only me, it's, you know, but again, it's no one, we shouldn't be thinking that way. And that is really the value that I wanted to bring out in this whole conversation, is because again, I find myself doing it, I'm sure, but it's knowing, acknowledging the fact, and I think that goes back to mindfulness, knowing the fact that I feel angry because of this, or I'm upset or depressed because of this, but I don't have to be, or it's okay to be, it's okay to, but let it go and focus on now. So if someone watching this wanted to be involved with one of those type of meetings, how would they go about doing so, if it's even open to other people?
So it is. So all they have to do is to go on Facebook, and it's called the Lansdale Anxiety and Depression Support Group. And all they have to do is click join.
When I post this, if it's okay with you, what I'll try to do is I will maybe in the comment section or something like that, I'll try to tag the group.
Oh, great.
So that this way there's a direct reference, no one has to dig or anything like that, and then you can take over from there. How's that sound?
That's perfect.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. If there was a message, one blanket message that you could convey to, you know, someone watching this right now who's just down and out, that person who fits the mold that we just spoke about, what's the one message you would want to give out right now?
After speaking with all of my clients, especially people that have severe anxiety disorders like the fear of the future and the unknown, one of the things that is consistent across every single person I see is, if you had a problem right in front of you today, do you feel confident that you would be able to solve it? And they always say yes. And so I say, then focus on today, because the one quote that I've always loved is 96% of what we worry about never happens, and the 4% that does, we didn't control by worrying. So it's a waste of time. But you have the confidence to take care of every single thing that happens to you today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's like, it's, and there was something close to that. It was like, life isn't what happens to you, but how you react to it. Again, I butcher these quotes. I remember
no,
them, but like
that's
I butcher
yeah, no,
them.
that's a good one.
Okay. Awesome. And the other thing is, if someone get a tip or two, right? So we spoke about mindfulness, and again, that's a rabbit hole. We can spend so much time on that. For someone watching this right now, what's something that they could do at home? Because, like, for me, if I was down, I'd hop on my bike and I hit the trail. Can't do that right now. Or maybe go to the gym, or, believe it or not, getting my hair cut. Like, that's therapeutic, right?
Yeah,
My wife is
yeah.
getting her nails done. We can't do those things. What are a few things someone could do at home if they were feeling a little down and out and wanted to bring some light to their
So
day?
that, like, to me, I think it would be two things. Like, so focusing on emotion regulation skills and distress tolerance skills. And the emotion regulation skills that I think are super important during this time, especially because it's all the unknown, having a routine. And it doesn't have to be, I realize that with like parents that are having to homeschool for the first time and like things are crazy,
Yeah.
like, not, I wouldn't say like write up a whole schedule for the week and try to stick to it, because
Yeah.
that's gonna drive you crazy. But like waking up every day, making a schedule for yourself and sticking to it so you have a routine, it's gonna make you feel calmer, more secure. And like getting back to what you were saying about the exercise, a lot of people don't realize this, but like, the improvement in your mood or anxiety with just 20 minutes of exercise is 90%. So if people just moved around a little bit, so whether that means going for a walk, or like YouTube has like fantastic
Yes.
exercise videos, like cardio, kickboxing, yoga, like whatever you want, it's there.
I
And
may
you
have
can,
tried a yoga class. I
oh,
may.
it's so
Yeah, I
much
did. I
fun.
did.
So
I did.
yeah, like, so there are things to do. And then there's also, which is on my group page if anybody's interested, but there was a list of open trails for like North Wales and Lansdale that you could still go to. There's not a lot of people, so you can practice social distancing, but to get outside
Yeah.
and to realize that the world isn't over, it's still there, things are still blooming, it's
Yeah.
still spring.
It's amazing what we can do in these times, and as you know, we'll definitely get through that. I will say the other beneficial thing, in my opinion, about having a routine, because I noticed this personally about myself too, is, again, this is going to end. We don't know when, and we
Right.
are going to return to some sense of normalcy. But we create habits really easily, right? Good or bad. And
Mm-hmm.
in this situation, I think it's a lot easier to form bad habits. And where I'm going is, create that routine so that when things do bounce back, you still have some good habits of getting up, doing something, whether it's going to work, or working from your laptop, or whatever the situation may be. Just create those routines to have normalcy, but to help you get around that curve when things do return as well. So
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But yeah, yoga, like I said, I've been trying for a long time to like make time for it, and it happened. And I will say too, from like being out, because I have been on my bike, as a matter of fact, today was one of them. I've seen a lot of people outside walking. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
And that was refreshing, because I literally said to myself today, like, I firmly believe if life were a little bit different here, right? It's a whole nother sidebar. I think people would spend more time on self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah.
walking or whatever the situation may be. So, with that said, is there anything else before I let you go and enjoy your day that you want to add? Let people know. Again, I'm going to plug your group in the comments, but anything else that you wanted to let people know?
Just like one of the other distress tolerance skills that I think we all need to practice right now, and it's one of the harder ones, but it's called radical acceptance. And I'm just gonna give an example of like when I had to use it.
I'm going to
So
write that down. Wait, radical acceptance?
yes, so it's basically accepting that, things are where everything in your life right now is based on your choices and the choices of other people. And, it doesn't, you have to accept where you are in order to be able to move forward. And I remember the first time that they were making us wear masks in the grocery store, and then the lines, like there was like one way you would go like
Yeah.
down, and then I remember like walking through the store with my cart, and I'm like, I don't like this, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I was like, well, guess what, Jennifer, like you've got to do
You have
this, and
to.
this is just the way it is now. And I'm like, okay, I give it up. Like, I'm not going to be angry. I'm just going to deal with it one day at a time. And I think people need to just like, instead of fighting it, instead of being angry about it, just like, it is what it is.
Yeah. It's funny. So there's more like men like grocery shopping now, because that's like what I've become, like the grocery shopper. And I literally like 2 weeks ago, I texted my wife. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I was just so angry, and I was getting ready to just like leave the car and all that. And as I like a couple minutes went by, again, it's just thinking about everything. I'm like, well, what else am I doing today? Right? Like like, I'm going to go home and do what? Okay. So grocery shopping now, instead of it being 45 minutes, it's an hour and 15 minutes. Get used to it. Okay. The
Yeah.
good thing is we're getting groceries. We're going to be able to eat tonight. And now I just made my wife upset. Right now I got this tension with my wife because I just yelled at her. And so, but I literally found myself there as well, in that moment. And again, just taking a second to be like, you know what? It is what it is. It's not
Mhm.
worth working yourself up over and being angry. So I totally agree.
And
Anything else? That was a good one. I like that.
it's like there's actually a scene in Schindler's List that I kind of think like speaks on this point, because it's when they're being taken into the ghetto, and it's like, I think they're a family of five, and they're rich, when they get there, and the husband's like, this is awful, and the wife said it could be worse, and he goes, how could this be worse? And then five other families walk into the same room, and then he's
Yeah.
like,
There's there's like a cartoon or meme or whatever, and it's like the guy in a sports car, and like the other guy pulls up next to him, and like, it's a car that's running, and he's like, I wish I was that guy. And then like the guy pulls up on his bike and looks at the mediocre car, and he's like, I wish I was that guy. And then like the guy in the wheelchair came by and looked at the guy on the bike, and it's perspective,
yep,
right? And
yep.
it can always be worse, but that's our mind too, just telling us again that before and after, never being present and being appreciating that bike, or appreciating the fact that the person in the wheelchair is there to hug people and share stories, and all of the things that people discount that
Right.
make our day valuable.
Hmm.
I love it. I love it. Anything else you have fun, like all these like little nuggets that I'm sure people can benefit from in some of these classes, but is there anything else that you also want to drop on anybody this weekend?
So there is this one thing, if anyone was ever interested in like dialectic behavior therapy, I have this thing, I think it's fantastic, but I'll show it to you.
Okay.
It's a book that I try to get my clients to purchase. So I'll put it up here. It's the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Wellness Planner.
Okay. I see
And like,
365. So it's like one thing per day. Yeah, I
yeah,
love stuff like that.
and the cool thing is it's like it has like what skills you practiced, three things you're thankful for, goals you work towards, and your shining moment for the day.
I
So
love it.
I just think that that's like such a positive way. Like if you know you have to fill that out every day, your mind is going to be geared to looking for those things
Well,
instead of the negative.
you just made one book sale, because am going to get that book. I love stuff like that where, you know, it kind of takes the guesswork out, but it's fun. It gives you some direction, and, you know, so
Yeah.
I'm going to pick it up, and I'll
Okay,
share
cool.
my experience with you.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you. I've done a ton of interviews with different people, and not to discount any of them, but I will say that I've really, really found value in this. And I hope that you stay well. I hope that we all stay well. And I hope that your doors open up soon, because again, like we said earlier, there's nothing discounts that one-on-one in-person connection.
Yeah, I agree.
So with that said, till next time, I will keep you posted on my journal journey. I like that, journal journey. And, and have fun at your 3 o'clock.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.